Hi everyone and welcome to this drawing video. In this video I want to show you how to draw a misty lake. I love working on drawings like this and I just really wanted to share this process with you. In terms of the materials, I like to use an HB pencil first, and then later on I was using 4B and 6B pencils. For the paper I was using smooth Bristol board, and then to help smooth the shading throughout this drawing I was using blending sticks. And lastly, to add the layers of mist I was using an eraser. But please don't worry too much about the equipment you're using. As long as you have any kind of paper and any kind of pencil in front of you, you'll be able to create something similar to this. As you can see, I started off by roughly sketching the outlines of a distant hill in the background. And then I used my HB pencil to add a basic layer of shading underneath that, keeping that shading nice and smooth and fading it downwards with a blending stick. But if you don't have a blending stick, you can make use of a brush or a cotton bud or even your finger. Any of those will work absolutely fine. And then I continued adding some darker shading towards the top of the hill to show where some of the areas are poking out of the mist, but also to help define some of the peaks, and just making sure to blend this shading downwards as well. And as you can see, I added some trees on top of the hill, making them darker towards the top, towards that darker shaded area, and then fading the shading of the trees as I work my way down the hillside. Also then using the blending stick to blend their shading downwards and to fade some of their details, especially as they go down the hillside, really fading the details towards the outside of the drawing. To create the cloud of mist in front of this hill, it was then time for me to use the eraser and just tap away at the shading that I added, just to create a cloud of mist all the way across the drawing. Next up, it was time for me to work on a layer of trees in front of this hill. For this, I used a 4B pencil, using the side of the lead and just roughly sketching some shapes. My idea for this drawing is to add darker layers as you get closer to the foreground, so using the 4B pencil is a bit darker than the HB pencil that I used for the hill. When it comes to working on trees, please don't worry too much about how they're meant to look, and don't worry too much about if they're symmetrical or anything like that. When it comes to working on trees, they are all these amazing and interesting and unique shapes. So I like to find some reference images, but I don't copy them. I just use them for inspiration. And just create a bunch of interesting shapes at first, and then you'll be able to refine the details later on anyway. After that, I then blended the bottom half of these trees downwards with a blending stick to show where their details have been faded into the mist. And then that's when I went back to each individual tree and started using a sharpened HB pencil to start refining their details towards the top, to show where the tops of the trees are really poking out of the mist and making their sharpened details really contrast the faded areas below. And then once that was completed, I then used the eraser to add a layer of mist in front of them, much like I did with the hill. Then it was time to add the next layer of trees in front of that, this time using a 6B pencil for even darker shading, and these are going to be the trees that are at the edge of the lake. Using exactly the same processes as before, using the side of the 6B lead to roughly sketch the shape of the trees first, then fade the layer of trees downwards with the blending stick, and then continuing to refine the details with the sharpened HB lead, just making sure the tops of the trees have a lot more detail to them, in contrast with the faded areas amongst the mist. And then I used the eraser to add a small layer of mist along the bottom of the trees, and this layer of mist is actually settled on top of the lake. And so then it's time to start working on the tree's reflection on the water surface. This can be quite difficult at first to start figuring out. I recommend to add lines to figure out the alignment and the direction the tree's reflection is facing. Just add the lines first and then fill out the details on top of those lines afterwards. You'll see me use that process throughout this entire section of the drawing. And in terms of the pencil, so for the darkest layer of trees, I used the 6B lead, but for their reflection, I used a 4B lead, just to fade those details a bit, making sure that the actual trees are the real focus point of the drawing and not their reflection. You really don't need to worry too much about the details you add to the reflection either. The illusion of the reflection is created without having to focus on the exact precise details. You don't want to drive yourself crazy trying to create an exact reflection. Once I'd finished drawing that first layer of reflected trees, I then used a blending stick over the top of them, much like I did with the previous layers of trees, but in reverse. And then I used the eraser over the top to continue adding that layer of mist. It was at this point that I was really excited to see the effect of the reflection taking shape, and I couldn't wait to continue working on the second layer of trees. For the second layer, I used an HB lead this time, making sure they're much more faded. The main thing that takes the most time is making sure they're aligned. That definitely took me the most time. Just using the same process again by adding the lines first and then filling out the details afterwards, then using the blending stick over the top of them, and then lastly adding the mist with the eraser. Then it was time to start working on the reflection of the hill. Figuring out the alignment was the part that took the most time again. One thing that helped me was using a ruler to kind of figure out the key points first and then just align them vertically. And then I made sure to add a few details of the trees as well, but I wanted to keep the details faded by using the blending stick. Lastly, as a final touch, and this is completely optional, I decided to add a flock of birds flying past. And this ended up being a real challenge trying to figure out the reflection. And after that, this drawing was completed. I love working on drawings like this. It's such a fun process, and I just really wanted to share it with you. I really hope this helps out, and if you have any suggestions for future drawings, then please let me know. If you'd like to see more drawing videos, then make sure you're subscribed, and any likes or shares on this video, they really mean a lot to me. If you want to follow my progress and keep updated with all the things I work on through the week, then be sure to check out the links in the description box below to check out my Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. And once again, thank you so much for the support and thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope it helps, and I hope you're having an awesome day, and I'll see you all soon.